maybe everybody could check in. We don't have that many people. Maybe everybody's on summer vacation. So,
Mm.
but how are you? You know, it doesn't have to be emotions, but just curious. So, how are you today?
Mm.
I just came off a weekend of cousins camp with my grandchildren, and it was actually siblings camp because I have four and two of them are babies. So I had two siblings, a 2 year old and a 4 year old, and we had little vests and safari hats, and they got pins for every activity they did. So they did arts and crafts, and we made an ant farm and swimming and bicycling, and they kept getting little pins and it was a spectacularly exhausting weekend.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Very good. I know you don't show up here thinking you're going to have to say something, do you? Like you're nobody prepared. So, all right. Well, you want to go right to the book? We can go right to the book.
I, I,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, so I've been told overwhelm, or somewhere I've got the mind that overwhelm is not necessarily an emotion. It's kind of like a
Hmm.
combination. It's an assessment, whatever it is. But yet, that's how I want to describe it right now. So, what are the emotions that might associate with overwhelm?
Well, you
Aggravation
tell.
shows up, but that's I don't feel aggravated. It's a mild aggravation, just a smile away. Oh,
s-
when
so
I feel.
you, oh, there he has it. Overwhelm, urgency, obligation, anxiety, fear, sacrifice. But it could be others too. You could be overwhelmed with joy. You could be
Mm.
overwhelmed with happiness. There could be a lot.
Yeah, there's a ton of fulfillment and satisfaction going on too. But yeah,
Okay. All right.
that was in that card deck you gave me recently, huh, Dave? Marcel. Sweet.
Okay. So let's go, Marcel.
Let's do it. Okay, gang. Chapter six. Chapter six. Session seven. Chapter six. And right out of the box, one of the things you learn about in chapter six is, oh, the program notes. Yes, yes, yes. All of us have been here. We know it's going to be recorded. And yeah. And this is a big one. This is a big one right here. Stop looking out there. And sometimes you'll hear people say, why? Why am I feeling this way? Maybe it's, hey, what are these emotions trying to teach me? What are they trying to tell me? Yeah, so it's, I can look out here. And what I learned was I tried to control everything that was out there to keep my serenity and to treat my tranquility. And if I do my work here, I don't have to worry about what's happening out in front of me because it's all inside here. So each of us guards a gate of change that only can be opened from the inside. Our inside creates what's going on outside, invisible, visible. And when I started thinking about this, I thought that the world would change. The world doesn't change. The situations don't change. But if I do, then I'm able to be more intentional in those situations each and every day. So it's really helpful to remind myself every day, hey, stop looking out here. Maybe we start asking, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Dan?
Yeah. So one of the things when we wrote this book, it wasn't intended to share or explain everything about emotions or everything about emotions and leadership, but more to plant the seed, to create some awareness. And this for me is something that I find with a lot of leaders and coaches I work with is that they're so habitually focused outside of themselves on their work, the markets, their spouse, their employees, their teams, whatever, that they don't take the time. They don't look inside. They're so busy, sometimes can overwhelmed, but certainly in a lot of urgency. And so, what we were hoping with this chapter was to get people to stop, pause, consider that maybe exactly what Marcel said, that if I change what's in here, if I learn about what's going on inside of me, I don't have to change what's out there. I can learn to navigate it. But I find a lot of people don't approach emotions that way because they were never shown that. So why we have emotions? Well, we say earlier in the book that we are emotional beings, that they're non-discretionary. The one thing that I'm always wanting people to see is, yeah, but you wouldn't want to live without emotions. You couldn't, but you wouldn't want to either. In fact, they're really desirable. Emotions, once you get a sense of them, once you understand why they're there, then you begin to see that, oh, they can support me. They can be helpful. They can give me information. They help me. They allow me to have relationships and experience the world. And sometimes we forget this because we're so focused on the discomfort of certain emotions. Today I have been in the emotion and it took me a while to name it. But what emotion did I tell you, Marcel?
Exacerbation.
Ick, no, what's it called?
Ex oh, it wasn't exactly
Exasperation.
exasperation.
Exasperation. Yeah, see,
Thanks,
that's
Melissa.
exasperation. And it's interesting because I did want to run away from it. It's like, that's not comfortable. I don't like being there. What can I do to avoid that? Rather than just saying, okay, so what's going on? Like, what's this about? What's it telling me? Why is it showing up today? And it took me a while even to name it. But that discomfort was something I absolutely didn't want to sit with today. But the moment I named it, I went, oh, okay, I get what's going on. I get it now. But without emotions that generate tension, for instance, we feel flat, right? Whether we're aware of it or not, we seek out emotions like excitement, anticipation, even fear. Like, why do people watch horror movies? Well, because it makes them feel alive. It generates emotions. So I think that remembering this, like, why are we fighting against them? Why do we fight against them? There's something that's there for us. Yes, there can be discomfort, but there's so many benefits. Marcel?
This is a wonderful slide if you're an alcoholic, because when you see the words unavoidable next to emotions, you sit there and say, man, oh man. Um, the thing for me is the word discomfort. And to avoid that discomfort, I wanted relief. I wanted relief from that discomfort. And so I had an outside solution helping solve an inside problem, that discomfort. And what I had to realize was there's a big difference between I want comfort or I want, what's the word I'm looking for? I want oh man, I just want an excuse versus recovery. And you know what I learned is that emotions, there's no consequences for them. So if I didn't listen to them, no consequences for emotions, just for me. And so they are unavoidable and they are desirable. Why am I fighting them? Why can't I be listening more to them? So, yeah, discomfort. We all medicate differently. And I'm just starting to learn that right now at 59 years old. So, yeah, thanks, Dan.
So how they work. This is something that I just find fascinating because we have this misapprehension about what's happening when we feel emotions. So sometimes we talk about emotions in a way that doesn't really represent how they work. It may seem like they work this way, but we say things like, well, that person made me angry, or that person made me happy, or that person irritates me, right? And what we imply a lot of times, and maybe what we believe, is that that other person can control my emotions, that they're in control of my emotions, not me. But if you break it down and you start to think about, well, what's really happening when an emotion gets provoked, it's, well, that person said or did something, right? They either took an action or an inaction, or they said something or they didn't say something. And here's the piece. I have a story or belief about what that means. Right. So they don't send me a text and what story do I make up? Oh, they must not care about me, or I must be secondary, or they're irresponsible, whatever. I think up some story about something, even little that didn't happen, but I expected to happen, or little that did happen. And that generates an emotion in me. But it's not because they caused it. They didn't generate the emotion in me. They did something. I have a story. That's what generated the emotion in me. This was a hard lesson for me. It was so hard for me to take responsibility for the fact that I was generating the emotion that I was uncomfortable with rather than them. It's so much easier to blame them. And I find that I still fall into this, where they still go, so frustrated, and it's that person's fault. And I have to remember it's not. It's really not. Now, maybe they did it intentionally, and maybe they were hoping I'd feel frustrated. But I think most times it's not that. People just do stuff. I have stories that generates emotions.
I think the one thing that comes up for me here, Dan, is the principle that says emotions don't justify our behavior. They better explain it. And so a lot of the stories that I tell myself aren't true. And yeah, so I have to go with story, but I also have to go with what's the actual fact. And I misrepresent myself with the wrong maybe interpretation of that story. So the idea of self-reflection sure does help a lot. And that pause between reacting and regret for me seems to be getting further and further apart. And so I'm happy about that.
So let's put you to the test now. So give us an example when this happens for you. Like, what is it that is most common for you when something happens? You make it the other person's responsibility for your emotion. You don't have to name names. I'm just curious, like, oh, so when is this a feature for you? Melissa?
Well, this is slightly embarrassing, but I think it might be useful. I had a recent insight because I had gained some weight, and I knew it was because I was not eating right, but I feel like I've spent a lifetime of blaming um, food and false advertising and just I guess people's representation. I think especially this idea in our society that says, when it comes to all the worst foods that, supermodels and people that otherwise look fit eat these foods. That's kind of like lie number one. And then also that you deserve this, that we deserve to be able to eat these things without consequence. And I realized finally at my advanced age and development that the emotion of entitlement was underlying a lot of these negative habits that I continue to bump up against and have
Mhm.
trouble with. And so, this idea that I'm owed this ability to eat these foods without consequence, and and I blamed the world, I think, for creating that belief. Um, but then, having to take responsibility and realize, that's not really the truth, the reality of it, and then coming to the emotion of acceptance, uh, hour by hour, day by day, as I begin to try to reprogram that. So.
Mhm. Wow, thank you.
Mm. Mm.
So where's this show up for you?
Can
Ken.
you hear me?
Oh,
Now we can. Sandy?
Yeah. So it happened this morning. I was discussing with my husband of the wisdom cruise I'm doing, and was excited. Haven't seen him for a couple of days. He's on the island, and he's like, "I'm excited," and he said, "So if you have to cancel it," and I said, "I've got to go. I've got something I've got to think about. Can I call you back?" Because I was about ready to take his tongue and rip it around his head and stick it in his ears. So I thought about what was bothering me about what he said. And I had to step back and, okay, he's thinking something. And then I went, first of all, Sandy, it doesn't matter what he was thinking. He could have just said, "I'm really happy for you, honey. I believe you're going to fill the cruise and it's going to be exciting. I'm so proud of you." So I texted him. I said, "Hey, will you do me a favor? We've been married 34 years, and I'm no longer going to accept your first practical thought every time. I'd like you to say next time when you hear me talking excitement, to say, 'Wow, good for you,' or 'Hey, I've got to go. Can I call you back after I think about it?'" So that's just something that happened today, and I'm in dignity with myself that I shared something without being angry about it, or resentful, or irritated, or tolerated.
Very good. Thank you. Jolene.
Something in this book really stuck out to me, which was that you can only give 49% as a leader or a coach, and they have to give the 51 because when I would work with clients in the past and they didn't do the homework or they didn't put their full effort into it, I assumed they didn't care. But the truth was, it was the emotion of acceptance was not there for me. And now that I really understand, I can only give as much as I have, and it's really up to them to meet me more than halfway. That emotion of acceptance now. And my favorite example is I had a client recently. I'm doing emotional regulation coaching. We did Myers-Briggs last time, so we're doing both. And I said, "Do you want 5 weeks for the homework? Do you want 3 weeks? I want to make sure you get the full experience and time." And she goes, "You can put whatever date you want on there. I'm doing it the night before, so whatever works for you." But it was cute because now that I've learned the 49-51, she's still going to put the effort in, but on her time, the way she wants. And the emotion of acceptance wasn't there prior to really understanding the 51-49%. So thank you for that.
Lovely. Thank you. Ken.
Yeah, this notion of turning inward or checking in with me first, I think that plays for me. The story that keeps coming up for me at the beginning of the year, took a look at, I've got my Garmin, so I know how many intensity minutes that it claims that I do a week. So I set the goal I would do 500 intensity minutes measured by Garmin. So the next Saturday came around and I'm short 2 hours. And Sunday there's like this to do with the family and this to do and this to do, this to do. And I spent 8-10 hours, it's like, how am I going to fit this in? What am I going to do, And it wasn't until I realized that, Ken, this was you that set this goal of 500. No, you're not going to get a raise, You're not going to get promoted. And I guess if you want to assign emotions to it, it could be integrity, if that is, or ambition and things like that. And it was going to massively get in the way of other things I'd prefer to do on that Sunday. So, and again, it's that turn inward, and it's nearly always for me some aspect of my identity, some aspect of my ego that I can say, yeah, you can lighten that up a little bit. Take a pause.
Thank you. So your Garmin provoking emotions.
My Garmin. I don't need a person to make me feel.
No.
To make me feel.
That's true. We don't. Could be your computer. Larry.
This may be a stretch, but what I was thinking when Jolene said the 51-49, that's an interesting perspective for me because in a lot of relationships, I'm like, hey, I know I can change my perspective. I know I can do this. And so I would recoil based on whatever the situation's happening and say, well, I could at least do this better. So I I did over percentile. So they were there. So I blame them maybe for doing whatever. I took over responsibility of my side. And one time in a conversation with my wife, who I've, been married to for 38 years, and in this interaction, I was like, okay, well, I'll take care of it. And she said to me, she said, hey, wait a minute. I've been a part of the problem. I want to be a part of the solution.
Mm.
And it brought us to a table in a meaningful way that I was just saying I'll take care of it myself. Well, we're together, so I can't take care of everything myself if we're together. So anyway, I felt like that plays into this, but maybe in a reverse fashion in
Mm.
some strange way.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, thank you, Larry. Brenda.
Hi. Um,
Hi.
lots of examples come to mind for me, but one that's like leadership specific. Early in my corporate career, I am not proud to say, but I fell into sort of like the blame game with a boss that I had, and learned a lot from that experience. But I was young, and I guess in my mind, I had this story that my boss should be there to support me. My boss should say, be a certain way. My boss should act a certain way. And a leader should be this, that, or the other thing. And I guess these were like unconscious beliefs, but they all came out when my boss was not none of those things. And I allowed that person to sort of hold me back. And I blamed him for, um, like, well, he's not letting me go to these meetings, and he's not going to promote me, and he does this and he does that. And it was very easy to fall into that because so many others around me kind of got into this gossip game, and it was just too seductive, because like that's how you bond with people in a company, especially when you're young and you don't necessarily know like the etiquette yet. You have to learn it. And I learned the hard way that that was not a good career move.
Yeah.
I relate with that. I could jump on board with that.
It still happens, right? To a certain degree for all of us.
Mm,
It's just very easy to project onto that other person.
sure. Yeah. And I think what we're saying is, well, we're not saying don't do that. We're just saying be aware. Like this happens, like you said. Yep, this happens. We do this. But we can't be emotionally empowered if we do that. If we say other people are responsible for how I feel, for my emotions, then we're giving up our emotional power, our agency. And so it's not that we should distance ourselves from other people. The whole point is for us to turn inward and to say, okay, but this is my emotion, so what am I going to do with this? Yeah. Marcel?
The only thing I can add to what Brenda just said, and it's very true. When I have people read in a large classroom, page one of Dignity and Leadership, it's page one. It's it says why dignity. The number one sentence, Brenda, the number one that's underlined, bolded, highlighted, raised their hand. It's talked about. It says this, and it's exactly what Brenda said. It says this: if the organization is changing you and you're unable to change the organization, maybe it's time to change organizations. And maybe that's not it. Maybe it's time to change your mind. Maybe it's time to change your emotion. And what we talk about at that moment is the emotion of cynicism. And if you look at the impulse of cynicism, what does it say? It says, I'm going to go get my fiefdom together and we're going to meet at the water cooler at 8 a.m. We're going to be like, this job sucks. And the other guy's going to be like, yeah, it does suck. It sucks a lot. What are you going to do today? I'm going to embrace the suck. And it goes, I'll see you back at noon and we're going to do the same thing. It's incredible. And when Brenda's able to say, wait a minute, this isn't helpful at all. Wait a minute. And that's how it goes. So good on you. Good on you for noticing. And the word is responsibility. Some people say this, it's not my fault. Oh, I know it's not your fault. It is your responsibility, though. It is your responsibility. It's not your fault. It is your problem. It's your responsibility now to work this through. That's the first thing I told my sponsor. Hey, man, me being an alcoholic, not my fault. He's like, I know, but it's your responsibility to get sober for your family. And so the journey begins.
Mm.
So nice work, Brenda. I love it. I think what you just stated is very real. It's very hard, and it's big. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. But like many lessons, we learn them late.
Well, life is a terrible
Or
teacher
it
because you
takes a
get the
few.
lesson and you get
Sometimes
the
we have to,
test.
yeah, well, sometimes we have to circle the drain and then a few times, and then we're like, oh, maybe this is a lesson I should take a little more seriously.
Absolutely.
Marcel?
Oh man. Yeah. So when you look at ways we navigate our emotions, I mean, when my wife walked up and said, "Hey, I think you got a drinking problem," all I had to do was say one phrase: "No, I don't." Guess what? Denial? Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. You're a hard leader to work for. No, I'm not. I might be stern, but I'm fair. Denial is a helpful emotion because when I lost my mother on June 19th of last year, it helped me mourn the loss of my only mother bit by bit. Suppression, agility, resilience, these are all things that help us navigate our emotions. People will say, well, suppression's bad. In that moment, being very, very stoical, being very dispassionate might serve the situation best. But I do have to go back and what? Reconcile that emotion. Because emotions want to be acknowledged and they do want to be experienced. And if I keep pushing it down, I don't get to write the end of the story after that. So these are ways for us to navigate. One last point. When it comes to agility and resilience, those competencies, the emotion of optimism plays a big, big role in both being able to sustain it as well as being able to reinforce it. So there's ways for us to navigate these emotions. Dan?
I think that was the whole point of this. We just want people to become aware that, okay, you have an emotion, you may feel stuck in it, but it's yours. So what are you going to do with it? And are you going to deny it? Are you going to suppress it? Are you going to shift to another emotion? Are you going to be able to bounce back? So one thing that I've noticed, people tend to see the first two of these as negative, and they tend to see the second two of them as, oh, these would be good skills to have. And I'm with Marcel. I would argue that they all have a purpose. They can all serve a purpose. They can all be helpful. And it's up to us to understand what they are and to make a choice about it. You know, what's going to be best in this situation with this emotion, where I am and where I want to go, what's going to be best? Because it's not always best to immediately shift to another emotion. It's really not. Because why? Well, that emotion that I was feeling today, it's doing some work. It's telling me something. It's trying to get me to take some sort of action, as uncomfortable as it is. So just shifting to another emotion, not necessarily the best. Denying it, well, probably not the best. I don't know. Sitting with it, maybe a little bit of suppression. Yep. Maybe being dispassionate about it. Maybe that's good. Brenda?
I really like what you just said around denial and suppression being often seen as negative. And this totally gives a different perspective and a different light to it because um, there is a reason. There can be a really important reason why we deny something, and it might be that we are just not ready to deal with something. And like you said, Marcel, it might kind of titrate or like space out like your grief in a way that you can handle it. Or it might allow someone to deal with something that feels so big that like it would be too much all at once. But maybe if you are able to one small step at a time, uncover or realize as, what's happening. Sorry, I'm like not articulating that last part very well, but just the idea of it can provide a support and it doesn't need to be seen as a negative. I like this
Mhm.
idea because I think a lot of people they just might not be ready to acknowledge something
Mhm.
because that means that you'd have to face it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, totally. Completely agree.
One one other add on that slide, Dan, if you can go back real quick, based on what Brenda said. So what I learned about me in being resilient was I thought bouncing back meant can you say you're sorry as fast as you can and then everything would go away. So being resilient would be bounce back. I'm sorry, that was my bad. So I didn't have a problem saying I'm sorry. What I learned was I had a problem staying sorry.
Mm.
Resilience doesn't always mean bounce back as fast as you can. No, no, no. I woke up this morning at 2 a.m. and at 3 a.m. I was on the road to drive an hour south side of Fort Worth, Texas to work with one lieutenant and one sergeant. And both of them are in trouble. And they're in trouble because they told a female officer, do they need to punch her in the mouth to make her tough for the streets? Not 1 month ago, not 2 months ago, but 3 months ago. We're still working. And they want to go and apologize and make amends to all the council and say, just why don't you slow your roll a second here? I appreciate your resilience and wanting to fix it. But let's work on a couple things first and get your root system in, which would allow the results to be better sustained. So saying you're sorry, that's awesome. Staying sorry and never having it happen again, that's a big difference. So I always thought resilience was bounce back, apologize, and all is forgiven. And what I learned was that's not always the truth. So resilience for me is taking on a whole new meaning when you see somebody else trying to go and make amends and say they're sorry and bounce back, but they don't have any what? No root system beneath them to not do it again. And so these are all things that take time, but they also too make you have to make that decision inside. So that was the one thing I was thinking about, Brenda, just based on what you said there. Thanks, Dan.
So emotional self-care
Oh my
is
gosh.
not something you do once in a while. It's a way of being. It's like breathing. You can't stop breathing for any length of time and expect to survive. So the whole point of this section was to get people to consider the habit of self-care, to see it as something that they need to keep coming back to, they need to pay attention to. It's not one and done. You need to continually be in this practice of self-care. And what it requires is that we reflect on and resolve emotions as we go. So we don't leave them all to stack up till a vacation or till the weekend, but we have a system where we can sit with them, we can pause, we can reflect on them, we can name them, we can make choices about them, but we don't wait to do it. We may wait a little bit to do it, but we do it as an ongoing process. And then we need techniques for paying attention to them and reflecting on their purpose and understanding their message or meaning. And then how do we strengthen the ones that support us? For me, this is what emotional regulation is all about. And I think all the elements we know about emotional intelligence, emotional agility, emotional literacy, emotional resilience are all part of this. But the practice of emotional self-care is something that, to be honest, I don't know very many people who have a strong practice. And the whole point is no one can take care of your emotions but you. Nobody can. You can brush your dog's teeth. You can take care of their teeth for them, but you can't take care of their emotions. Somebody can brush your teeth for you, but they can't take care of your emotions. They just can't. It's not possible. So if we don't ourselves develop a capacity for emotional self-care, then it's not going to happen.
One thing Dan and I did last year was we kind of set the stage for 200 probation officers to all come together in College Station, Texas. for 2 hours, and they were each given a deck. A deck of memory cards. That's all they had. And we had one slide. That's not true. Two. The first slide was the word burnout. That's all we talked about for 2 hours. Probation officers, they think that burnout may not be tied to specific emotions. And we spent 2 hours culling 68 emotions down to two. And those two emotions that prevented you from burning out were self-compassion and perseverance. That kind of works against burnout. And the big thing that they all said was self-care is exactly what Dan said. I'm the only one who can do it. But we go into businesses and it says mental wellness. And Dan and I think that's like going to the dentist twice a year to do preventative. But really, the preventative is emotional wellness, brushing your teeth and flossing. We need both. I need perseverance and I need some self-care to what? Stay married. These will help stay married. These will help stay sober. These will help with burnout. But self-care, if you look at the back, and I love what Dan and I wrote, the number one way to dial up self-care, treat yourself as well as you treat your dog. And so these are all things that may seem common sense, but they're just not so much common practice. And so that's what we're trying to bring into the conversation. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Anybody else on that slide? Anything else kind of hitting you? Self-care? Okay. Yeah. Dan?
So the last thing we wanted to do was connect this with the conversation about mental health. And although we don't talk much about it, we talk about emotional well-being much more. But what was interesting about this quote taken from an article by a scientific from a scientific journal that's quite well known was that in every study, in every case, that a healthy emotional functioning included these things here in periwinkle. You experience the emotion, you express the emotion, you regulate, and they talk about positive and negative emotions, which we don't. But the point is well taken, is that there are discrete steps to this, is we have to pause and we have to notice and we have to name and we have to then choose. Are we going to suppress? Are we going to deny? Are we going to shift? Are we going to bounce back? And so for us, this is really key, because what we're talking about here is something we're talking about everywhere as well. How do we stay healthy? And how do we stay healthy mentally, but even more so wholly? And how do we stay well emotionally?
And there is an economic cost to emotional dysregulation. Yeah. And so these are all the things that we're starting to see. So I love the word regulation. I also love the word navigation. And if you look up all research, if you just got off this call today and said, what does research show about people experiencing trauma throughout their life? And everybody on this call has experienced trauma. Big T trauma, little t trauma. We've all experienced it. The number one thing they say is it's not the number of traumatic experiences that erodes your emotional well-being. It's not the number. It's how well you navigate those traumatic experiences. So what if we gave trauma a language? What if we were able to do that? To where the behaviors I'm displaying are now being able to have a what? A language to communicate and express themselves. So it's less about controlling your emotions in that trauma, and it's all about navigating. And when we said notice, name, navigate, that was a very deliberate term to pick, navigate. Why? Because that's what allows us to keep going throughout life, in family, in career, navigate. And so yeah, there is all those other ones. This morning I talked about with the lieutenant the difference between anxiety apprehension and fear because they're going to get a new chief soon. And some of the officers are feeling anxiety. Some are feeling apprehension. Some are feeling fear. And if I don't know the differences, tornado, hurricane, tsunami, cold, flu, pneumonia. What are the nuances of those? And how do I coach to them? So I love it. I love people are like, well, that's just semantics. Well, no, it's really a nuance to those things, and they can be the difference that makes the difference when you're trying to what? Help somebody navigate through something that they can't name. So, what are y'all taking away from chapter 6? What's kind of hitting your head? What's hitting your heart, Jolene?
Out of the whole chapter, that's the one sentence that I underlined is the maladaptive emotional functioning is thought to be a critical feature in nearly all mental health disorders. And what made me think of that, or as the most important sentence, is I had a client that I only had 4 sessions with her when I became an emotion centered coach with Dan. And she said 4 sessions of emotional regulation coaching, emotional literacy, was more powerful than 4 years of therapy because she figured what
Mm.
she actually needed was to work through her emotions, and that wasn't happening. And so I think this is such a critical piece that needs to be included in, according to this, and I agree, in all mental disorders.
Thank you.
Mm.
Melissa?
I would completely agree with Jolene, as both the resonance that that had with me as well, and then everything that she just said about the value of it. I would also add that um, I've interacted with hundreds of people at this point with mental health conditions, some of them on their very worst days, and I can say unequivocally that emotional regulation is the key to a lot of their progress, and that the current treatments for this unfortunately have gone to looking at the brain science and the physiological science of trauma. And it struck me this morning as I was listening to something else actually about how we're now addressing this as a psychosomatic kind of reaction. So when we have this trauma, right, we're going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Okay, well, what you're doing is we're saying now then that we're going to determine our treatment based off of our most ancient base instincts. And it's kind of like no wonder that this is not really effective for all, because yes, those things are there and they're there for a reason and they do serve us in a lot of things, but we have this extra layer, right, to us as humans that involves our emotions, and we must confront that if we expect to recover, progress, grow, develop. So,
Thank you, Melissa.
One thing I'm reminded is, and it kind of happens every day, is I'm playing the game I'm given. You know, I'm playing it, and most days, I've got to trust the detour that I'm going down because it doesn't go according to plan. But what I'm also reminded too, and Dan and I were talking about it this morning, nobody starts ready. Nobody starts ready for this. I have it like ready to go, and I'm ready. It's kind of we're giving them some self-awareness, and they dabble, and then they see a result, and then they try it a little bit more. But I'm always reminded that all of us on this call really are the ones that kind of set the stage, and it's the emotions we show up in. And that kind of enables us to be more intentional. So this was a very good meeting for me, just to experience all of it again. And it really is about the game we're playing, trusting the detour, and you know, going at the speed that they want to learn and that they do learn. And I can give 49% to your development. And that came from you can't boss love, you can't boss passion, and you can't boss want to. Those are three things I can't boss. I can't force you to love. I can't force you to be passionate, and I can't force you to become more emotionally regulated than you want to. And that was really hard for me on the very beginning part of the journey, especially when I was in front of police, because I only had 4 hours and then I had to have a total head shift. And it was, now you're just planting seeds today. That's all you're doing. Just plant some seeds. And if you don't see that tree grow and you don't get to benefit from that shade, that's okay. Somebody else will. And so that's what I'm taking away from today. Anybody else? Sandy made it home safe. Larry, anything on your mind?
Always, but you all have already surmised that I'm an extrovert, so it's a spiritual discipline for me just to sit here and shut up. So I was practicing that. I was like, don't jump in, just listen to everybody because they need to speak. So, well, one, the story that you tell yourself is huge for me. That impacts our emotions all the time based on how we're narrating what happened. And so for me, uh, over and over again, um, being able to choose um, to readdress what stories, uh, when asking what emotions or what are the emotions teaching me, a lot of times they're revealing the story I'm telling myself,
Mm.
and sometimes I have to adjust the narrative based on, man, I'm feeling this way about that person. What is that story? I've fabricated something that is not there. That's all me in this. Anyway, I really uh the book that's really impacted me big time and I'm in a continual narrative about what is it? What am I saying? How am I seeing this? What am I perceiving it? Another thing I wonder if there's a little bit of a okay to not be so precise in emotions. Like someone the other day said, I said, "How you feeling?" And they said, "I'm feeling like it's going to be a really hard day." And I that expressed an emotion, and I don't know if getting parsing out the exactitude of it or just taking it as face value that I'm feeling like it's going to be hard. Maybe apprehension,
Mm.
you know, uh, anyway, so to me, I was like, maybe you could just validate it's going to be a hard day is a feeling
Mm.
and not have to get into my own head about now what exactly is that? How do I define that? And so anyway, I appreciate you bringing me into the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Larry.
Well, to your last point, Larry, I think it's sometimes we can work with people in the area of emotions. We don't even use the word emotions. I think it's fine. The
Mm,
whole idea for me is understanding. And do they understand that, what's driving that feeling, that sensation? But so I'll tell you a story. I had a friend and his wife she was a nurse in a plastic surgeon's office, cosmetic surgery. And she used to go out in public with him and she would say, "Whoa, that one needs a chin lift." She had assessments about everybody. She took her work into public, right? Because that's how she saw the world. She saw that, but she also had this need to comment on it and to share that. And I think we know stuff, but that doesn't mean we have to share it. That doesn't mean we have to name it. That means we can use it for our own observations. And we can say, wow, I'm wondering, looks like maybe that person's experiencing this emotion. We don't have to know, right? I think when it serves, it serves. And that's up to us to decide. That's the art, right? You know the science of it, and here's what the emotion means and the structure, blah, blah, blah. When's the right time to apply that? Well, that's up to us to figure out. And I would say only when it serves the other person, not when it serves
mm.
us. So that's how I approach that. But I think it's a wonderful question. Like, to what degree I heard Obama give a speech once, and he talked about envy and jealousy, but for me, he had them backwards. Well, I didn't call him up and say, "Hey, Barack, I think you got those reversed." I'm just like, I know what he means, right? I understood what he means. Everybody understood what he meant, even if he used different language than I would use for it. It didn't make it wrong. So I would say use what works and what serves. Yeah, it's a great question. Brenda?
Um, I love what Larry just said about like it's okay to be imprecise. Sometimes it's like if we can get in the territory of emotions,
Yeah.
like that's a win. If we can get in the same ballpark, and
Yeah.
then if it, like you said, Dan, if it serves the person, then continue to drill down and maybe get more precise, like if that's what's called for or if
Yeah.
that's what the person wants. But just asking like about how someone feels is a beautiful way to normalize. And like, isn't that what we're doing, right? Like, it just make it okay for someone to express something.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then
Love it.
you can get more granular later.
Yep.
It's like, are we in the same, are we in the territory? Like, that's a
Yep.
win.
Thank you. And Ken.
Yeah, I'm just struck by the insidiousness of it's always there and not always clear. My perceptions, they're just so much a part of me, and so it's kind of like I was lovingly slapped in the face, and not intentionally at all, but I arrived 5 minutes after the hour and said I'm late, and my thoughtful friend said, no, late is just an assessment. You got here at 5 after the hour. So we said earlier, well, nobody starts ready. Everybody starts where they are. So you didn't start late. You just started where you are. And I think that's a neat way to put that. And also the aspect of Dan one time said sometimes all they want is a cup of coffee, not a full deli meal. So it's yeah, just kind of start where you are and nibble away.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you all. All right. Really lovely to see you, and thanks for coming during summer when you could be at the pool or the beach or somewhere else doing something else on the water slide. It's great to have you here and great to be in the conversation with you. So thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Bye,
Thank you.
Sandy. Bye, Brenda. Bye, Melissa.
Bye,
Bye,
Sean.
Jolene. Bye,
Bye, Dan.
Ken. Bye, Larry. Bye, Dan.